Okay, there are still people dropping in, but I think nevertheless we can start with our webinar in here. So first of all, welcome to the Advanced JOSM webinar organized by Training Working Group of the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team. My name is Michael here. I'm currently the chair of this working group. With me is Jeffrey Catteregger. He's from the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team and works there as community projects lead. With us should be Sharon Amoja. I think she has some connection issues, but don't you worry, we've got enough topics to talk about. So what are you going to hear? First of all, I will tell you something about the layers in JOSM, particularly the imagery layers, how you can judge if it is a bit more current or less current, what about imagery alignment, how to deal with all this, and a few other tricks and tips in this respect. After that, either Sharon or myself will dive a little bit more into editing techniques. That means more complex buildings and intersections of roads and waterways. After that, Jeffrey will jump in and tell you something about using filters and selections. I will give you a presentation on how conflict resolution works. And in the end, Jeffrey will be back dealing with relations. So let us first dive into the imagery layers. I hope you can all see my Java right now. So let me know if this is not the case. So the imagery layers, of course, as you all know, that's the window here on the top right of the JOSM interface. And so usually we've got our data layers here. We've got a couple of imagery layers. And yeah, let me just jump in with one of the questions which might arise when you are somewhere, really somewhere, and you would like to map these waterways, which you can see in here. As we all know, the direction of flow determines the sequence of the nodes, but if you just look at this isolated patch here, you really don't know whether it's east to west or west to east. So obviously you can try to zoom out and see if there is some lake or if there is some ocean nearby. But we do have some topographic layers here available, which come to your rescue in such cases. My favorite one here is the Open Cycle Map. If it is not already available in here, it's not part of the standards portfolio, which is usually offered. You simply go to the imagery preferences, and up here you can find all the imagery layers of, first of all, the global ones, followed by the country-specific ones, and the Open Cycle Map is here. Typically, for instance, the Open Topo Map has something different, it's a similar style. Just try out which gives you a better impression. So you've got contour lines, zooms in a little bit. You could see that we're about 500 meters down here. We're about in the 4-digit range up here, 1,000 meters, 1,100 meters. So this clearly means that to the west, the terrain is higher compared to the east. So in this case, we would clearly map anything here from west to east. Yeah. By the way, if you've got any questions while any one of us is talking, please use the chat window, and one of us will typically be observing that and either answering directly or notifying the speaker. So these topographic layers are a big help in identifying what is on top of a mountain, what is down in the valley, and you can easily combine it if you make sure that the layer is above of the usual imagery layers. You can use these arrow keys to shift the layers here around. Now it would be below anything else, so you wouldn't see it because the Bing layer is above. Just move it up there, and with this I button here, you can easily adjust the opacity so that you can, well, try to find a position where you can still see contour lines, and also you might need to increase the gamma maybe a little bit so you can still see contour lines, but also have an impression of the imagery below that. So you can adjust that to your needs and can really easily figure out what the terrain is. And in drawing waterways, that is a big help, of course. Typically, when we situation, let me just here, let's just skip all that. And this is a densely populated area, and we've got this one certainly. So and with different imagery layers, you can see that the imagery quality is varying, but what is even more important, also the angle under which these images have been taken. So first of all, if it looks a bit unclear, like in this way, you can also give it a try whether, for instance, that's of course the Maxar one we are looking at. So you can give it a try, maybe increasing gamma might make it a bit more visible. You can also give it a try in terms of sharpness, but of course you can't do more than the imagery really suggests here. So, but usually playing around with these, particularly the gamma and the sharpness, can help you getting more out of the imagery which is available. So if we look at the data which have had already been entered previously, this can give us an idea what have they been mapped from. So for instance, let's also use S3. So I always like junctions like this because that was something I inadvertently. So let's get that back to normal here. That's way better. So it is quite a good idea to look, for instance, here at those roads. They all look pretty well aligned with the imagery. So that seems to be a good match. If we take a look at Maxar instead, we see, well, this doesn't work so well. Pretty much the same would go for Bing. So in this case, Esri does not only give us a good imagery, it also gives us quite a good alignment between the imagery and the road network. So if for some reason you'd like to prefer to work from Bing, then in this case, it would be preferable if you make sure that Bing matches those features. In this case, you can use this I can adjust imagery offset. If it is not already visible, you can also use the entry here from the menu. Just make sure that you select proper one of your imagery layers, and then you can simply use your left mouse button and pull it around so that matches those roads here in a better way. And you see, well, we've got an imagery offset of some 5 meters here in one direction. Press OK once you're done, and now you shouldn't see a big difference here between those different layers. So if you now wanted to start mapping some of the missing buildings in here, the question is always, well, we've got a lot of already existing mapping in this case, and well, unless you are mapping on a hot project where a project manager already gave some instructions, which is, well, the gold standard, which is the imagery, everything has been aligned to, or whether you should align every image to existing mapping. If you don't have any such recommendations, I would usually go for least resistance. So if most of the mapping has been mapped according to one imagery layer, then, well, adjust other imagery layers so that they match the existing mapping, and then start adding your features. If you want to map a road and there are maybe just one or two buildings obstructing and they seem to have been mapped from a different imagery source, just adjust those buildings, for instance, so that you can map your road without running into any trouble here. So another thing you might add here is, well, it's obviously a city. There should be some GPS traces which can tell us the real truth. Well, real truth is something, well, let's have a look. I mean, I downloaded them before. If you don't know how to do that, if you open the usual download window, you can toggle whether you want to see OpenStreetMap data or GPS data. You can, of course, also include both. The GPS data are usually added to a layer of its own. Well, here you are. This bar here above there is 10 meters long. So that means if you can look at the spread of all those GPS traces, that's pretty much the same order of magnitude. And that's what I usually say in webinars like this. There is no absolute accuracy on this planet. There is a finite accuracy for the alignment of the imagery layers, and there is also a finite accuracy for GPS equipment. And anything up to 10 meters is well within specifications. So if you see anything which is off, and which is off by less than maybe 10 meters, you really can't tell which is the proper position. So anything in here means we have to go for least resistance, as I said, and make sure that things are pretty well aligned otherwise. So the most important bit, which you should always keep in mind, is we need a consistent map. So people on the ground will use this map for navigation, and it is important that buildings are on the proper side of a road, that we do get all that they are on the proper side of a river, and that we do get all the intersections between roads and rivers proper. Whether it's 5 meters farther away or not is really not the crucial point, and we don't really know what the exact position is. So, that is also one of the points why we always tell you, if you've got adjacent buildings here, please don't let them share nodes. If you want to just realign something, want to just move one of those buildings away, it always is a nuisance, because you first have to, well, duplicate those nodes. So by the way, how do you do that? You simply, select this node, and in the tools menu, there is an unglue ways. And you can do the same in here. Tools, or simply press upper G for unglue ways. And that means that now, as you can see, we've got two nodes. So the one was duplicated. One belongs to each of these polygons. And if you'd like to shift it away a little bit, that's easily possible. And so now they are independent. And that's what we usually would like to see buildings, because in densely populated areas, if something in the middle is torn down and replaced with something new, and you'd like to follow up with that in OpenStreetMap, that's really, it's not nice if you really have to disentangle all that here first. Yeah, when it comes to problems, there is an interesting layer I would like to mention. The first one I told you about was the topographic layer. And there are also certain validation layers. And The one I like really much is the inline validation layer. So just to make sure, yeah, it's not a layer, sorry, of course, it's a paint style. So just to make sure, in the preferences, which you can access by hitting F12, you can see that there are the map paint styles. There is a whole lot of them, and one of them is the inline validation style. This is something I really use pretty often. What's the good thing here? You can see if you zoom out a little bit. Oh yeah, so there is something which looks red, and if you zoom in there, you see that this validation style flags building inside building. So switch it off for a while. You can see that comes from this Apple Paint style as well. The other one here flags it as well. So this is one building, and so we've got, let me just, okay, so we've got one in here which covers the whole outline, and someone mapped this as a building as well. Of course, that's not as it should be. So building inside building is something it flags. So yeah, we've got something similar in here. If you wonder why, well, there's just one building. That's why I also like the Apple style a lot. If you zoom in closer, you can see that here is a node, which also has a building equals the S tag, which of course shouldn't be. So this Apple style also has a couple of nice validation features. Any individual node which has a buildings tag is shown like a small house here. So such layers are really a big help. They also cover overlapping buildings or roads overlapping buildings. At least I'm pretty sure they do that. Let me just add some highway in here. Let's make it some kind of service road. All right. And let's move it so that it. Okay, thought this would work. Okay, they don't cover everything, but I'm pretty sure they cover overlapping buildings exactly. So just shift back. So usually this Apple Paint style and this inline validation paint style are things you might want to install. And my final remark when it comes to all those layers in terms of imagery, we very often receive the question, how do you know how old this imagery is? Well, the truth is we only know it in very rare cases. So Bing tells us pretty directly, if you use your right mouse button and then say show tile info, it tells you, well, it doesn't really tell you a lot. It tells you the capture date. The lowest entry here is somewhere between 2014 and the end of last year, which is certainly not very helpful. Sometimes it offers you a much smaller time span, but you can typically see that many of these layers can be years old. Unfortunately, most of the other layers don't give us that. But there is a service which at least can help you identify whether anything you see in here is recent. And that is comes from the European Union. They operate a network of satellites called Sentinel. And that is something I'd really... Exactly. So let me just grab the main portion here, and I can share it here in the chat window. So by default, it shows the right satellite, and that would be the Sentinel L2A here. The resolution is not that you could do mapping. So for instance, if I try to zoom in more, then you will see it just gets blurred. So this here is about the resolution you get. But the good point is pick your date. It doesn't go back, of course, indefinitely. So I think, yeah, 2017 is about the earliest, but what's the most recent imagery in here? We've got something from January already. And yeah, sometimes it can be a little bit covered in clouds. Might want then to select maybe a different one, play around with it a little bit, but the Sentinel service covers each square meter of the globe every 5 days. This is about the most current aerial imagery, satellite imagery you can find on the net. So if you just see someone map something completely different in here, well, then that would be old. So you can easily see recent developments like this one in here that looks fairly recent. So if we go back a couple of years here and have a look, then yeah, that was just when obviously development started. So just in order to figure out, is the imagery you're looking at fairly recent? The Sentinel service is really a great thing, but it doesn't give you a resolution which is good for mapping unless it comes to larger highways. So this is about what I wanted to tell you about the layer handling and what you should know about different imagery layers here. Do we have any questions up to this point? Okay, you see base map in OpenStreetMap. Well, the main problem I see there is, as I said, it doesn't give you a really good resolution. There seems to be, the license does not seem to be that much of a problem, because I've seen that at least some of these have been included in the imagery preferences. You can see that they have the Sentinel here, but just one from a couple of years back. So there isn't even one from 2022. So that's why I wanted to share the URL with you. And yeah, just so as I said, you could basically use it, but as I've shown you here, it might be okay for larger roads, but as you can see, you can't map individual houses. The resolution simply isn't good enough, because that's not the intention of these satellites. They are intended to monitor changes in the Earth, and that's what they are really good at. But in order to cover every part of the globe every couple of days, they can only do this with a limited resolution. Otherwise, it would take a lot more time. Jeffrey, are you aware of anything else I might have missed? Any other comments? Just browsing a little bit.
I think that was the only question. Yeah, so I think I've covered it.
Okay, so has Sharon arrived in the meantime?
No, we don't have.
Okay, so then Jeffrey, would you be able to continue with filters and selections, and then I could prepare something for the advanced editing?
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Michael. So I'll go ahead and share my screen and take us through filters and relations. Yeah, Michael, can you let me know if my JOSM is visible? All right, so hope you're able to see my JOSM. All right, so yeah, I'll continue. So yeah, I'm going to be taking us through relations, sorry, through selections and filters. So we in my JOSM here, what I do have is some sample data that I'm going to be using, and it is some data from Kampala in Uganda, from the Wakiso suburb of the city. So I'll just load it here. So this is some sample data that I have downloaded in my JOSM window. And basically, one of the things that we have in JOSM that helps us when we are doing our work is filters. So if you go on the Windows menu here, you will see like there is several windows, but one of those is actually the filters window. So if you don't see it on your side panel here, you can always come here and activate it. It also has a shortcut, which is Alt-Shift-F, which can bring it up for you very easily. So yeah, you can see I have just loaded mine, and I have a couple of filters that I've been using. But how do you add filters and use them? So I'll just give a few examples. So you may want to filter out a particular type of data from your data set. So for example, I may want to see only roads. So to see only roads, I'll basically come to my filter window and come to this plus button, which is add filter. And I'll basically write my search string. So I know how roads are tagged in OpenStreetMap. Roads are tagged as highways. So I'll write highway and then equals star, which is the asterisk. And that what means is that filter out all roads. So if I come here and submit my filter, there are three buttons here. There is E, which is enable. There is H, which is hide. And there is I, which is invert filter. So if I activate all the three of them, JOSM is going to hide all the other features, and I'll be looking at only roads. So this is helpful if you are doing mapping and you want to make sure that the roads network like makes sense, like the roads are all well connected. Then the filter will help you to do that. Because if you try to do that when you have like all the different data types in there, like all the different objects like buildings, land use, and so on, the data is too much, and you can't easily make out, like, for example, the pattern of road. So yeah, that's how a filter can be useful. But I can also be more specific. I may say, okay, I want to see only roads which are, for example, tertiary. So I can deactivate this, and then I can just write, okay, I want to see highway equals tertiary. And basically what this will give me will be now a more specific filter, which will now hide all the other types of roads, and then it will show me only the highways which are tagged as tertiary. Yeah, and there are very many different, types of filters that you can use. And basically, when you come here to the filter window, you can see some hints. So this helps you to, yeah, you can use this as an example to help you to build your queries. And I have a few more options here. Yeah, when you start the filter window, you may not see all of these options, but to be able to see more options, you need to go to your edit preferences and make sure that the export mode is switched on here. So when you go to your filter window, you'll get a few more options to use. So the other example, for example, I can give is I may want to see all of the amenities, all features tagged amenity. So if I come here and switch on, so you can also leave your filters within your window and come back to them whenever you want to use them. So you don't have to write it every time. If you have written it before, it will keep it in the filter history here. So right now here, what I'm seeing are the features which are tagged as amenity. So if I select one here, I can see what it is. I can see this is a school. If I select another here, this is a parking. This is another school, So yeah, that's how filters can be useful. But sometimes you may want to, for example, check all the schools here and just check one by one. So if you're having 1,000 points, it can be confusing for you which school you have already looked at, which amenity you have already looked at, and which one you haven't looked at yet. And one of the plugins that you can use to help you do that is called the to-do list plugin. So again, to install plugins, you go to edit, preferences, and then you go to plugins here. So then searching for the to-do list plugin, if I search for to-do here, I can see it here. So it's basically a matter of selecting it and then clicking OK. So for me, it's already installed. I'll not install it again, but that's how you would install it in case you don't have it yet. But then how do you use the to-do list plugin is what I want to show you next. So yeah, again, when you activate the to-do list plugin, it will appear as a window here. So if it doesn't appear, you can basically just go to Windows and then click on to-do list here, and then it will appear. So I can see my to-do list here and it has some objects. But if I right click here and then I say clear to-do list, then it will be clear. So once you have loaded it, it will be empty like this. So let us say I want to see all the nodes which are tagged as amenity and add them to my to-do list here. Basically, what I would do is to, I'll write a filter and I say, okay, I want to see, yeah, everything tagged as amenity. So, but you can also combine actually two things in your query. So I can say, and I also want something which is a node. Okay, so I want it to be an amenity and also want it to be a node. So if I add this, I've just clicked on object here and this has come. So type node. So I'll submit my filter here and then I can come here and activate it. So basically now what I have in my window are all the nodes which are tagged as amenity, and I can select them. So if I just draw a rectangle over them, then they are selected. And now I can come here to my to-do list and I say add. So now I have all these points and I know there are 19 of them. And they are in my to-do list. So now what I can do, actually, I can remove the filter so that I can see the different data, the other data sets, but I can also now add the imagery. But now the advantage is now I can still check one by one. So if I go to try and trust, which I think is a restaurant, and double click, JOSM will zoom to where that point is, and I can check it out. So I can see, and I can see the author here. It was mapped by Sektoliko, who is, I think, is on this call. So yeah, I can just, check if everything is okay with that point, if I want to make any corrections. So, or if I want to add more things. Yeah, and if I finish checking that, I can say mark. So this is useful if you are doing like some data cleaning and you want to make sure you go point by point, even when you have data that you have collected, let us say using ODK, you want to import it into OpenStreetMap, and you want to make sure that before you add it, you are checking whether the point is still existing so that you don't add duplicates. So you can use the to-do list to to go through your points one by one. So I've just jumped now to another point, which is Rafik Secondary School. I can see the nodes here. I can even move it. So after checking that, I can now go to a new one. This is Lasan, which is a pharmacy. Again, it was mapped by that user. So like that's the to-do list, how it can be useful. This is a parking lot. That's mapped by Alan. And whenever I say mark after checking a particular point, then it shows me here that this is 3 out of 19. So it means I've checked 3 out of 19, and then it tells me how many are left. So that's kind of the importance of the to-do list plugin. It helps you to move point by point. Okay, so I've shown you the example of how to use it when you are checking points. But what if you want to use the to-do list when you are checking areas, for example, buildings? How do you do that? So I'm going to clear my to-do list now. So I'll go to the clear here. So it is now empty. And I'll first unselect this image. So I have my data here. I want to select some buildings, okay? So if I select everything now and add it to the to-do list, so for example, like this, it will add like points, it will add so many things that I'm not interested in. That's why we combine the to-do list with also using the filter. So I'm going to filter out only buildings. Okay, so I'm going to write my filter again, and I say building, because okay, so I'm submitting my filter, and now I can activate it. So you can see now it has kind of enabled the filter. So if I just uncheck everything here, if I check all the boxes, now it has selected it has filtered out everything else, and now I'm seeing only buildings. But if I do this and I say invert, it kind of inverts the filter. So now it's showing me everything else and it's hiding the buildings. So that's how you can use those checkboxes to kind of give you what you want. So if I click on the edge here, what I have here is that I see only buildings, but I can also see the other features in the background, but they are kind of hidden. So they are like faded in the background. Anyway, so I want to select only buildings and add them to my to-do list. So let me first clear it here. Okay, so I'm going to use the lasso select tool to just select part of these buildings here. I don't want to select everything. So yeah, I've selected some of the buildings, and now I want to add them to my to-do list. So, but what happens is that when I selecting both the ways, and also it is selecting the nodes. Okay, so if you add them to the to-do list, it will add all the nodes, which is like 4,800 objects. All right, that's not my intention. What I want is to select only the object, which is a building. So to be able to do that, you need to unselect the nodes and just make sure that only the ways are selected. And to do that, what I will use is a shortcut, which is Shift U. So if I come here and if I select again everything, so I select the objects. So if I press Shift plus U, what's going to happen is that it has unselected the nodes, but it has kept the ways selected. Okay, so if I now add my objects to the to-do list, I can see now I've added only building. So I can see building, building, building. Previously it was node, node, node. So now I have buildings, and they are 939 buildings. And I can just now move one by one, like how I was doing for the nodes. So again, the shortcut is Shift plus U. So now I can move building by building. This is still useful if you want to select, if you want to, if you're doing, for example, if you're adding, for example, addresses on these buildings, and you want to make sure each building has its address, then you can just do that. The other thing that you can also do with filters, and that's the last example I'll show you, is you can also filter objects that were mapped by a particular user. So I see this user is, Sector Eco, but what if I want to see everything that was mapped by Sector Eco in here, in this data set that I have downloaded in my window? How can I do that using filters still? So what I'll do, I'll first deactivate the existing filter. So to do that, I use metadata, and then I just say user, and then I write the username. So the username is Sector Eco. Okay, so if I submit this filter, now I can come here and activate it. So right now, what it is showing me, all the objects in my data set which have been mapped by this user called Sector Eco. And what that helps is that if, for example, you are checking data quality and you want to check for a particular user, then you can also, use that kind of filter. So there are so many filters you can do. You may even filter using, for example, relations. You might want to filter nodes, ways, relations. So yeah, there is several filters that you can always create. So yeah, that's how we do filters, and that's how we also use the to-do list. And also how the other thing I've shown us is how to unselect nodes so that we can select only ways. So yeah, I'll stop here for now unless there is any question. If not, I'll hand over back to Michael. Michael can help me check the chat if there is any questions.
No, there is no further questions so far. The point is, okay, so then I would get back to some of the more detailed editing techniques. So that means just share my screen again.
As you bring your screen, I can answer this question, which is in the chat from Michael Joshua. So yeah, Michael is asking, is it possible to export the filtered data into a shape file or a JOSM file? Yes, it would be possible. So you just have to select the data and then save it as another layer, which is maybe a JOSM here. So it's possible to save it as a file and have it local on your computer.
Just okay. Going to share my screen again. All right. So I think you should see my JOSM, and so first
it's not yet up.
Not yet up. Okay. Okay. I have to confirm that. So
I can see your JOSM.
not yet.
We can see your screen now.
Okay, that's great. That's great. All right. So just a little recap. I think you might have heard that before. What about roads and waterways? So it is pretty important that we get it right, how a road intersects with a waterway, because whether it's a ford or a bridge can make the difference between you can get across there or you can't in a rainy season in certain countries. So bottom line is you shouldn't do it as this user did it in here because, well, obviously, just, okay, yeah. So let me see, this is some better imagery, yeah. So there is a kind of track road in here and it continues up there. So basically, it's pretty obvious that at least unless there is a really big flood, you can get through here. But let's make the point very clear. And that means you simply add a node connecting both the waterway and the river. Ah, here it says Ford equals yes. Okay, so this person managed to, only this paint style didn't point it out clearly. So yeah, when it's a wide ford, then you can make sure that there is a segment of the road which is designated ford equals yes. If it's just something smaller, so okay. This is also ford equals yes. So let's create an example in here. Okay, let's say sorry for that. Okay, there we put a bridge, which is pretty much right. And to look for that. Okay, there we are wrong with the bridge. And okay, let's assume we like to have this waterway in here. So just map a little stretch of that. And let's see. Water, and that's the river. Okay. Now we've got two situations we need to handle. This one here clearly tells us that, well, there is obviously no bridge. So here we'd like to make sure that the highway and the waterway share a node. And then go to presets and yes, it's yeah, streets, and down here is the ford, and apply the preset. So that makes it very clear that you need to observe the level of water if you want to get across here. So let's see, can I see more decent imagery? No, but it's not that easy, but pretty obvious that this is not a ford. So in this case, just select here two nodes on the highway where the bridge is, select the two nodes, and then go to tools, and you want to split the way here. So sorry for that. Split the way is up here, shortcut P. And then it asks you which segment should reuse history data. Well, by default, one of the larger ones, that's pretty much okay. The important bit is that we go here, edit the highway, tick the bridge, and make sure it's got layer 1 so that it is above the river. So there might be situations where this is not a real bridge, but the waterway is more like in a tunnel. So let's just revert that here. In this case, what you would do is, well, do pretty much the same. You cut something here out from the waterway. Once again, you split the way, And then you mark the segment here, go to the river, and then it's kind of a tunnel, and this is called a culvert. So this is just when there is more or less kind of pipe. And again, we have to get the layers right, and of course, in this case, -1. So I've seen people tag complete rivers as layer -1 simply because they don't want to care about intersections with roads. Please don't do that. The default layer 0 means anything which is at ground level when you take a look from above. So clearly -1 means something is below the earth, and the positive layer, of course, means it's above the earth. So that's something which is at ground level can pass below that. It's really this vertical stack. And you don't need to use any arbitrarily high numbers. These are not meters or something like that. It's just a simple ordering. So if you would have kind of a motorway which is above everything here, and it would be above that bridge, a larger highway here, then this one would receive layer +2, so that it is above this layer +1. So it's just a simple ordering. So always make sure that intersections between roads and waterways are marked properly. So let me get back to a couple of building situations, a few more complex buildings. We can reuse what I saw in there previously. And I think, yeah, that was where S3 was the one of choice. Oh yeah, that's a good one. Okay, so this one obviously was something which isn't right here. So we'd like to map that building. That poses a couple of problems. When you've got a high-rise building, you can easily see the roof. So we typically tell everyone, map the roof so that you get the exact shape, and then move it down to the base, because all kinds of maps always show the footprints of objects where they hit the ground. So here we can only see roofs at different levels because that is obviously one building. What can we do here? Well, what I would do here is start mapping them separately. So we use the buildings tool, shortcut B. Start with this line. Okay, and map it in here. Now we take another one here and map the other roof. Something like this. Now we move them both so that they match here at the base. Let's do it like this. So now we've got the proper shapes, and we might need to extend this a little bit, and that's where the extrude tool, shortcut X, comes into play, because we need to extend this a little bit. And then we can select those two buildings here and merge them. So join overlapping areas. And then, yeah, you've got one building, except for this not so nice notch in here. In this case, you could delete one of these here and then simply square the whole building again. And now you've got something which probably covers the real outline of this building, moved to its proper position here down at the base. So in this case, if you can only see parts of a building pretty well, you can just map the individual parts and assemble them like this. The important point in densely populated areas with high-rise buildings is that we map everything where it hits the ground. Otherwise, you would easily run into trouble. For instance, let me just away here. if you would map these buildings here only where the roof is, then you would run into real trouble mapping this road. You will really end up in a conflict. So always make sure that, so don't do it like this, but move it down so that there is enough space here to map the road properly. Because, yeah, it's not supposed to run in the building here, so the road is, so this intersection would rather be somewhere in here, and this road would be more or less here. But that only works if all the buildings are mapped down here to the base. So there are certainly some other interesting examples. Okay, someone only mapped this one here. I'd rather say this here is not the building proper, but the building is this complete shape. So what you would do here is you would start the building. Okay, what you can do is here press Control while you're putting down this node here, because otherwise it would snap to the road. So if you hit the Control key while placing the node, it's still separate from the road. Move down here. Move down here. Yeah, now things get tricky. And let's just first simply put it like this. Okay. This is, of course, not exactly proper. We've got some outcroppings here. And if we'd like to map that, we can use the extrude tool again. That means we simply have to place additional nodes in here. Hit the X key and move this out here and move this out here. And then once again, and something here and extrude this back in again. So in this way, you can get a proper outline of everything in here. And once you're done, select it all and make sure it's mapped down to the building. Yeah, move them, of course. And, well, you will recall that I just moved the previously mapped entity up here. And there is a reason for that, because usually in OpenStreetMap, we don't want to delete anything which was mapped previously. The history might still be interesting. So let's select the old building and the new geometry and go back to the tools menu. In this case, it's the more tools, and then select the replace geometry. And now you've got the building with all its tags, whatever it had. Yeah, in this case, it was building apartments and the name for that. It's important to retain all of that, of course, and also the history. And I'd say when you want to adjust anything in existing mapping, always make sure that you reuse the existing history. So please always, as far as is possible, reuse the geometry, just replace it. And so in order to keep the history. And this extrude tool is a very powerful tool if you want to modify geometry. In this case, yeah, just square it a little bit and take care of this. Oops. Like that, undo, move, exactly. And then what you can do in here is you add one in here and delete this one, and then you've got this angular corner again. It looks nice. It's, well, as far as we can see, aligned with the bottom here so that it matches the footprint. We have a sound distance to this road in here, and that's how you would want to to do consistent maps. So that looks interesting in here. What's that? Okay, so that's a covered footway. That's not what you usually want to do if you want to map something which is a building passage. So anyways, running through buildings. So if there were one in here, so if you would connect something in here, for instance, you would simply, well, first of all, of course, map it, then make sure, here we go, that it would be a dedicated footway, for instance. Okay. And if you would run some validation script here in JOSM, you would run into trouble because now that footway would be inside the building. So what you do is, again, you select the nodes where it intersects the buildings. And if you know that this one here, select the two nodes so that we can split this way again. And if you know that there is a kind of tunnel through the building, but at ground level, then you go here. And I'm not sure if it offers that. No, it doesn't offer that here, and that's interesting. So it's building passage, tunnel equals building passage. Okay, so the paint style knows how to deal with this. And this is probably the only kind of tunnel where you don't add a layer because, well, it's still on the ground level. The only point is that the building is all around it. And that's what this key building passage designates. And I guess that's what should be done in here as well. So yeah, so that's probably something about the more advanced techniques I wanted to show you. I mean, I'm open for any discussion, suggestions, if there's anything else, or if you would like to see explained. Unfortunately, Jeffrey, I had to drop out of your talk for a few minutes. Have you been dealing with relations, or will that be, is that still?
I haven't gone to relations yet, so.
Okay,
yeah,
so then that means I can continue with conflict resolution, yeah, as intended. Unless you stop me and have some questions still about some of those editing techniques. All right. Let me just conflict resolution. Okay. So it might happen that if you want to upload your editing, that unfortunately a window which looks like this one appears. As the headline tells you, it does not necessarily mean you did something wrong. Typically, other people were editing in the same area. And in this case, what I created there is they were editing, well, at the same road, but at the other end of that road. And if you just want to synchronize now your mapping into the database, it will tell you, well, you haven't been making your edits to the latest version available of that feature. And now the server itself, the OpenStreetMap database, doesn't know what to do with it. I'll just, there are many ways what you can do in here. I'll just say, well, what I usually hit here is the option synchronize the entire data set. Well, synchronize means that a JOSM will load this new version from the server as well. It will present it to you and let you decide what to do with it. If you only synchronize this one way where the conflict occurred, you're not going to know how many conflicts there are in your upload. So you should always synchronize the entire data set. Once you do that, it'll tell you what it found. If there is just one conflict or a small number of conflicts, you can resolve them one after the other. If it'll tell you there are 150 conflicts, well, you might be better off dropping your editing, delete this layer and start over from scratch. So because going through that several hundred times is certainly not the recommended way. But if it's just a handful of conflicts, you can do that. So then there is a conflict tab on the right side of your JOSM. So just show you. It's one of those here, and the conflict here you would see all the conflicts which appeared in your layer. In the example here, there is just this one conflict of a highway. So then you can, well, double click it or highlight it and then click on resolve. And well, what I'm going to show you right now is what you would do with all this handful of conflicts you might see. For each such conflict, you get a conflict resolution editor, which looks a bit intimidating at first, but it isn't that difficult to understand. Basically, it has 3 columns here. On the left side, you see my version. This is what you edited, the state as you edited it, what you wanted to upload to the database. On the right side is what the current version of the database looks like. And there are some color codes. The green nodes are the same in both versions. Red nodes were added in one version only, and nodes here in the salmon color are the same in both versions, but at different positions. So in this case of a highway, what does it tell us? In our version, we've got a couple of new nodes at the end, which means I simply extended this existing highway. While in that part, which I didn't touch, another user was adding nodes in the meantime. So it was either mapping a bend a little bit in more detail, or he was adding a secondary road which dropped off from that highway. So, and there is the central column, and that's the place where we can edit. So we can take the best of both worlds and combine it to a new version, which will then in turn be uploaded to the database. So that means, in this case, it looks pretty straightforward. It's very clear that those green nodes should be the same here. In fact, I only want to upload my newly added nodes. So anything in here shall be retained. I mean, it's not just the new nodes which have already been there, it's also what this other user added. This is far away from where I edited. So fortunately, I can just say, my editing starts here. Anything else, whether it was just slightly modified or added, well, should also be part of the new merged version. So, and that's what you can control with these arrow keys. So this arrow key means shift anything from the right side to the left side. So that's why I highlighted it here. You press that one, and then the merged version is equal to their version. Now we have to add that what we really want to upload, that we extended this highway. So we have to add just those new nodes down there. So what are you going to do in here? First of all, we have to select them. Then they will be here highlighted in blue. And you see a couple of more options in here. You could either put them to the top or to the bottom of the merged version. You could also highlight one specific node or group of nodes here, and then these other options would become available that you can insert it immediately before or after select a highlighted section here in the central column. Of course, we edited at the end of that highway, so we want to see all our nodes here at the end of the merged version. And once we feel happy with what we see, you must click freeze, which means that you're done in compiling here your new merged versions out of these two suggestions. So now we've got a merged version which contains all the edits of that other user plus our additions. I froze it, and then I can say apply resolution. Otherwise, if I would now see, oh, I missed something, you can at any stage here unfreeze it and go up editing. Then you end up in a layer which contains, well, the best of both worlds in your opinion. And then you would simply upload it again. And well, unless someone else had been editing here in the meantime, you should be good. Of course, if it turns out that you modified something in here and another user did some other modifications in here, then it might turn out a little bit difficult and you might be better off skipping your edits. Just dropping it and then, yeah, doing it again from scratch. But in many cases, and particularly in highways, chances are that other people who interfered with your mapping did so at another end of the line. So this is, in many cases, going to help you. It might also be that it's not the nodes which are different, but the difference could also be tags. So for instance, you were editing a primary highway and someone else figured that this is not a primary highway, this is just a secondary highway, and in the meantime tagged it from primary to secondary. Then you would see, as we did, the additional nodes or changed nodes wherever you modify the geometry. But you would also see, would also be highlighted here that there are different tags. And it's pretty much as if you want to merge different strings of a highway into one single highway. Then you will get a window which looks very similar to this one, where you see your tags, where you see the tags of the version in the server, and where you can figure out what's the best decision. So what should the final merged version, which tags should the final merged version have? Yeah, that's basically anything behind this conflict resolution form. So really the most important bits to understand is this is the right one is the most current version on the server, the left one is your current version, and the here in the middle you have to compose that which should become the new version. That's well, as much as I can say about conflict resolution. So any comments? Yeah, please can you send us the documentation? The point is, as all in our previous webinars, this one's being recorded. So give it a few days and then you will find it on Pot's YouTube channel. You might, if you're not that patient, well, you can easily look for one of the other recordings. We've held this webinar typically once or twice a year, so contents hasn't much changed over the past few editions, so you will find one. And there you can review it and have a look at it in detail. I don't see any other questions in here. Of course, questions typically arise once such a webinar is over, so let me assure you that you're not lost. You can reach out to us even after that. Simply drop us an email at mapa-support@josm.org. If you want to reach the training working group in general, like our work, would like to join it, well, the training working group, of course, has an email address as well. If you are on HOT's Slack, We do have a mapper support channel, and we do have quite a lot of other channels. There is a validation channel, there is a channel dedicated to the tasking manager. So I'd say this is our primary means of communication for some years now. You can join it just by pointing your browser to slack.josm.org. You have to ask a couple of questions, and then you will be sent an invite. And once you are on Slack, you will be in the general channel, and then you can browse channels of interest. All the working groups there have channels as well. And if you'd like to know more about the humanitarian OpenStreetMap team, then you're invited to browse our website, where you also can find information about working groups and other ways how to get involved. Unless someone raises a hand last minute, which I think is not the case currently, then I think we've more or less come to the end of this webinar.
I still had the bit on relations, Michael.
Pardon?
I have the bit on relations. I can go through it in a few minutes. Yes.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Didn't want to cut that off. Yeah. So yeah, go ahead, please. I'm sorry for that.
Okay, so yeah, the last part we are going to look at is going to be relations. So I'll share my screen again. Okay, yeah, hope you can see my screen.
It's visible.
It's
all right.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so basically, yeah, what we're just going to be chatting a little bit about relations. So in OpenStreetMap, we basically have yeah, different data types that we map. So we have nodes, we have ways, but also we have what we call relations. And basically what the relations would give you would be to be able to map some kind of complicated objects. For example, if you're going to map a very long highway, then you'd have to map it as a relation. If you're going to map, for example, a lake, you're going to map it as a relation. So we map water bodies, we map sometimes also some buildings are mapped as relations. And one way how you can easily know that the object you are dealing with within your JOSM window is a relation is that when you select the object, you will see this word which says a member of. So then you'll know, okay, this is a relation. But also if the relation window is open, you also see what that relation is made of. So for example, this object here that is on my screen in this slide is, you can see there is, yeah, there is a national park. There are some routes, which are all parts of a particular relation. So yeah, the relation panel, which is this one in the to show you what is in that kind of relation. So the simplest relation that we do have in OSM, it is the one that can show you a building which has a courtyard inside. So yeah, sometimes you may be mapping and you come across such a building. So it is kind of, it has like a space within the middle. So the way to map that building is basically to go to tools and then you create a marked polygon. But that marked polygon is actually a relation. Yeah, after creating it, you'll see that it will show here the properties here that it is a marked polygon. After creating it, you'll see that when you select it, there is, yeah, the courtyard is kind of empty inside, but then there is the building around it. The other example that we normally come across in OpenStreetMap is when you're mapping a sports field, which, for example, may be having a running track around it, but also it may be having now the soccer playing field in the middle. So to map the two and show that they are all part of the same kind of sports field or stadium, then you have to map them as a relation, and then just show that they are connected. Yeah, so you can create also other types of relations by just clicking on this button here under in the relation window. So again, if you don't see this relations window, you can always pull it up from the Windows menu. But then it has this button which says create a new relation. Yeah, so that's how you basically create a relation and then add objects to it. But yeah, we shall come back to this in a bit. Yeah, so the first thing you'll want to do when editing an existing relation is to download all its members. So like, for example, this example that I was showing you on the first slide, after selecting it and right-clicking, there is this menu that comes, and one of the items on that menu is download members. And basically, when you download the members of a relation, it will download all the different segments, because you may be seeing a relation in your window, but then when the other parts of that relation are not visible, so they are like in another, not in the data that you downloaded. So to download all the members, then you just have to right-click the relation and then download members. And then when you do that, then you will see the complete relation. And I'll show you that practically in a bit. Yeah, and one way that you would also see that the other members are invisible or they're not within your window, there will be that word incomplete on your relations window. And what that means is that, yeah, you have the relation visible in your window here, but not all relations are visible. Yeah, so in the OSM database, a single way can only contain up to maximum of 2,000 nodes. So if you find an object which is so long and complex, for example, a river, for example, a river Nile, which starts from Uganda and goes all the way up to Egypt, to be able to map such a feature, then it's going to be represented as a relation. So we can see this example of a road. This is a road in Colorado in the US. It has up to 587 segments. So those are like individual segments, which can be like individual road segments, which have now been combined to form the route that makes up this road. So yeah, that's where you can also use relations, and you can see also this shows you the word super here. So this means that this is the super relation. So we have relations, but also we have like super relations. And what this means is that, yeah, this relation is also made up of other smaller relations that are combined to make up this super relation. And that's why it is very careful. It's always advisable that when you find an object in OpenStreetMap and you're editing and it's a relation, don't be careful so that you don't break the relation, because you may find situations, for example, a whole country disappearing from the map just because a particular part of the relation was deleted or was broken. There was an instance, for example, in Uganda, where the Lake Victoria disappeared from the map, and that was because someone had broken or entered the relation without knowing. So it's advisable, if you're not sure of what to do, yeah, just ignore it, because you may end up breaking the relation. Yeah, but coming back to this example, because this highway has so many segments across its entire length, and you may find it's even crossing different states. So like each state has a different bit of the relation. So that's why it's now a super relations. So things like, for example, bus and train routes are also similar. But yeah, there is also boundaries. So if you're going to map country boundaries, like administrative boundaries, or even land use boundaries, for example, forests, also we use relations. So yeah, relations are, you always come across relations when you are editing in OpenStreetMap. Yeah, so other cases where you find boundaries would be, for example, coastlines. They're also mapped as relations. So yeah, that's why it's also important to make sure that yeah, when you come across it, yeah, don't delete that relation or break it. So yeah, coming back to this example of the most simplest of the relations, yeah, you will see that yeah, we normally have rows. So this is like the if you go to a relation and then you click on the edit window, it will bring you the edit window for a particular relation. And what you see here is that you have tags. So a relation will always have tags. So the tags will not be put on a particular, on a way or a node. The tags will actually go onto the relation, and that relation will have members. So for example, for this polygon, which is a building with a courtyard inside of it, it has the outer and also the inner, and I'll show you how to have something like that. So the other bit, like on now a bigger kind of relation. So for example, what we are looking at here is a park, like a national park in the US, and you can see that after downloading all the members of this relation, you can see the different segments which are tagged as outer, but you can also that it is complete. So this ring here, which is in black, is very important because it is a loop. So this is one of the ways you can identify that a particular relation is not broken, it is complete. So when you find it is broken, then you can, the thing to do would be for you to fix it by adding the portion that is missing and then fixing it. So yeah, so this is just a simple example. So if you have like different members here and you want to add them to a relation, basically what you do would be to select these and then add these to the members here to make them members of a particular relation. And then you'd go ahead to give it like keys and values and kind of add tags to that particular relation. So this is, for example, an example of a river, which has like different segments, but then it can be combined into one complete relation, which is combined, as we can see here. So yeah, after adding them here, then we can see they are added. The three segments have been added, but then they are not forming kind of a loop. So what you have to do here is click on the forward, apply row forward, so that then they can be kind of form kind of a loop, as you can see here. So then you have to kind of click on this button, which is sort, which will sort these into their order, so that it kind of sorts which segment follows the other. Yeah, so again, this is an example of where you may come across a relation and it is broken and you want to try and fix it. So basically you see where it is broken and then you find the missing segment, add it to the relation, and then you'll be able to kind of fix it. So I'm going to switch to my JOSM now and just show you some examples of relations and how you can kind of play around with them. So yeah, switching to my JOSM now. Again, this is an area in Kampala in Uganda. So I've already downloaded some sample data, which I'm going to use here. So I'll go ahead and switch off some layers so that we see the actual data. Yeah, again, you remember like in the previous session, we looked at filters. So filters will also help you to, to select on the relations. So yeah, for example, if I select an object here, I know this is a boundary that I've just selected, and I can see from its property here, from the property, this is admin level 4, it is boundary administrative, but then it is a member of PG, it is also a member of Wakiso. So because it is a boundary, on the other side it is another district, on the other side it's another district. That's why it is a member of 2 different relations. And if I right click here, you can see the different the menu for this particular relation. So I have the option to edit it, but also, like I mentioned, you can also say download members, which can allow you to download its members. But let me just add a filter here, which is, so if I want to see relations, then I'll just use this filter, which is type : relation. And if I submit this filter and activate it, it will actually hide all the other objects, and it will basically just show me only objects in my window, which are relations. So let us see which kind of relations we have here. Sorry, I think I had clicked this twice. So I have a lot of data in my window, so my machine is a bit slowing down, but let's see. Okay. Yeah, so this is what we have now, and we can look at some examples. So this is a boundary, which is a relation. So I can also select this. This is a wetland, which is also a relation. But what if I want to see, all the members of this relation, which is a boundary? So what I'll do, I'll select, then come here and right click, and then I'll say select relation. So if I say select relation and now I zoom out, I'll see the whole extent of this relation, and it is shown with this kind of purple color. So I can see the whole extent of the boundary, which is a relation, and it is even showing me in areas which have not been downloaded, but then I can see that part, which is part of my relation. Let us look at another example of a relation. So we talked of a building, which is kind of having a courtyard. So I can also show you on imagery how this building looks like. So yeah, this is a building here, and we can see it is having a courtyard inside. So the best way to map this building is to map it as a marked polygon. So if I select it here, you can see it is a marked polygon. And if I click on edit, you can see here, this is the other window, which shows you the inner and the outer. So yeah, if I select inner here, then in my if I select outer, you can see the outer member is selected here. If I click on inner, the inner member of this relation is selected. But then we can see the attributes of this marked polygon. This is a building, university, this is its name, and then the type is marked polygon. So this is kind of like the simplest of relations that you can deal with in JOSM. Let us look at some few other examples. I had mentioned a sports field, so let us see here. Yeah, this is kind of I think a football stadium, and you can see it here on the imagery. So it has a running track around it, but also in the middle it has the soccer playing field. But then when you check out the properties, it has been mapped as a marked polygon. Again, if I click on the edit button, I can see how it has been tagged and the different members it has. So let's look at another example. Yeah, this is a lake. It's called the King's Lake. It's located in Kampala in Uganda here. but you can see it has also been tagged as a multi-polygon, but it has like a small island in the middle. So that's how also, relations are important, because there is a small island in the middle, which is also part of the relation, which is the lake. So to be able to show that all these objects are related, then they have to be mapped as a relation. The last example I'm going to show you is, so you can see this is now showing me the whole boundary for the whole country. But let me just look at another example of a boundary. So if I select this, so this is a segment, which is part of a relation. So if I right click this object, and then I need to see the relations window. So I'm going to put it here. So this is relations. Yes, I've just brought back the relations window here. So you can see the different relations that are visible here. And what is interesting with, for example, boundaries, you may find a river is also part of the boundary. So instead of, you don't draw like the line for boundary and also draw the line for the river. You just have to have the, the line, which is a river, and then add it to your relation and say, this river is part of the boundary relation. But yeah, let me see, just checking this, which is, I think, Kampala Central. So I'm going to say, download its members. I want all the members of this relation to be downloaded, so that I can select them and see its properties. I think this is taking longer. Okay, but yeah, let me just say go to select relation. So if I say select relation, then I can see the extent of this relation, where it goes. So this is the relation actually for Kampala city. But if I go to the edit button here, then I can see the members that make up this relation. So there are different relations, and then I can see up here its attributes. So let us say if I came and I found, like, for example, like one part of the thing is missing, then I can simply come here, select it, and then add it back. But then you can see it's not now part of the relation. Then I have to give it a role and say this is, for example, outer. But then it is now, kind of miss. I need to pull it back. So you can see now the relation is kind of broken. But then I can, sort it out using this button here. And now it forms a complete loop, which is a relation. So yeah, you find relations, and you can always, fix them. But the way to see that they are broken is if you find like this loop is incomplete, then you know that, okay, maybe a particular segment, for example, this has been kind of deleted out. So I've just deleted the segment here from my window. Of course, I'm not going to upload this, but I'm just showing you an example of how a broken relation would be kind of looking like. So I've just undid to bring it back, and now you can see now it is forming a complete loop. So yeah, that's it in brief about relations. They are a bit complicated to map, so but they're a good thing to learn how to map. And for example, if you want to update like boundaries, administrative boundaries, if you want to map like forests, land use, water bodies, for example, big rivers, lakes. I think most of these objects are already mapped in OSM anyways, but in case there is a new one you want to add it, you add it as a relation. So yeah, that's how you, that's a little bit about the relations, and I'll stop here and see if there is any questions in the chat.
Yes, there is one where the school grounds are treated as a relation.
Come again, Michael, what's the question?
There is a question, are school grounds treated as a relation since it has several school buildings inside?
Yeah, that's a good question. So from what I've seen, I think school grounds are not treated as relations. It's just yeah, a kind of a boundary around the school. Yeah, I haven't seen school grounds being treated as polygons. Yeah, unless yeah, if anyone knows, I can jump in. But yeah, I think they are mapped just as a way, not as a relation. Okay. Yeah, if there is no other question, I think I'll stop here and hand over back to you, Michael, to wrap up.
Yeah. So yeah. So then once again, yeah. Thanks for joining us on this Saturday. Quite a good response. Thanks for everyone who asked questions. That's always very interesting for us. And yeah, as I said previously, there are a couple of ways of how to communicate with us if you have further questions or if you'd like to join our activities. Otherwise, I'm sure we'll meet at one or the other hot project. And yeah, start improving your skills and look out for other webinars which we are going to announce. And with that, I think, yeah, we can end the recording. As I said, it will be available on HOT's YouTube channel within a couple of days, usually. And yeah, so thanks again.